Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from YourBlackWorld.com, and I wanted to talk today about Adidas. Adidas is that company that decided that for some reason that it makes sense to release shoes with shackles on the shoes. They become known as sort of the Adidas shackle slave shoe or slave shoes or whatever you want to call it. And and it caused a firestorm this week. We wrote about it on YourBlackWorld.com and really raised to stink about it. Our readers got angry about it. They went to the Adidas Facebook page, had something to say about it, and before we knew it, this story was was international, and they were talking about it all around the world. Somebody sent me articles from England where they were talking about it there, and before long, Reverend Jesse Jackson jumped in and had something to say. And then when that happened, they shut down the shoe. They took the shoes off the market. Now, I wanted to talk about how this happened and just whether or not Adidas should have stuck to their guns. What's the source of this kind of mistake? And to talk about this, I wanted to bring in one of our primary contributors and editor at our blogger website, Miss Nomalanga Mhauli-Moses. She is also the creator of the blog SuccessfulBlackWoman.com, and she also happens to be the reigning Mrs. Botswana. I love to brag about that. And so, first, I want to ask Nomalanga, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Boyce. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Now, you and I had a disagreement about this. It's funny, we don't disagree that often, but and even when we do, it's always friendly and supportive and respectful. But you and I disagreed. You said that Adidas should not have taken the shoe off the market. I woke up this morning and I'd written a piece where I said, "Good," and I'm glad these shoes are gone, etc. And then next thing I know, I look over and I see that you're telling me that I'm wrong. So what was the source of the disagreement there?
Actually, I want to just say I didn't think that you were wrong. I just felt like maybe you perceived their intentions a little bit differently. I think that when you were writing, you felt like maybe the people at Adidas were being ignorant when they did that. And
Hmm.
when someone drew attention to their ignorance in terms of the effect or the feelings that people attach to shackles, that they thought, oh, well, excuse us, we'll pull the shoes. And that's
Hmm.
how you kind of said, great, that they pulled the shoes. My interpretation of what happened was that they took a risk. It's
Hmm.
business 101. If you want a lot of attention, you have to take risks. They took a risk that they got a lot of attention, and I believe that's what they were
Hmm.
looking for. What
Wow.
surprises me is that when they got their attention, then they decided to turn around and say, "Oh, sorry, you didn't mean to." I believe they meant to. Yes, you meant to. You meant to get attention. Why else would you make a shoe like that? So to me, it was trying to pretend like it was a mistake because I really don't believe it was a mistake.
Okay, so when you say that they took a calculated risk to get attention, do you think that they were seeking to get this kind of negative attention? I mean, do you think that they were seeking attention because of the correlation between the shackles and slavery or the shackles in prison? Or do you think that they were just seeking attention because the shoes were different? That they thought, wow, this is a cool, trendy style. We're going to put this out there and see how people react. I mean, do you think that that was the approach, or do you think that they literally, in their minds, knew that people were going to connect these shackles to slavery and incarceration and all these other horrible things?
I believe they made the connection between the
Hmm.
shackles on the feet, slavery, and it did cause an uproar. They got exactly what they wanted. I believe they got exactly what they wanted.
Hmm.
I'm just surprised that, or maybe they didn't think it through. Like when we do that, when we do get the attention, then what? But I believe that's what they did. And again, like I said, with a company like Adidas, I don't believe that on their marketing team, they don't have a single person who didn't say, oh, wait, this is what's going to happen, or this is what might happen. I really don't believe that. Not with a company as big as Adidas and not here in the United States.
Hmm.
So I think they knew.
Well, that's an interesting point. I think that where I saw this coming from, and you and I both have, I think the ability to kind of talk about this. I mean, we both teach about these things, at our respective universities, and my take on it was, look, Adidas is probably a company that is about as diverse as most other big corporations, especially at the highest levels. When they decided to throw the shoe out there, there were probably a couple people in the room who said, this isn't going to work or this is crazy. But maybe that individual or those individuals were not empowered to stand up and say, we need to take these shoes off the market. We can't do this. I think that the original designer, my speculation would be that the original designer was not thinking about slavery and incarceration and all these other things when they released the shoe. Because remember, this is a company that's based in Germany, so they're not necessarily as sensitive to the issues of Black Americans, not just Americans, but Black Americans as we might be, right? Um, and remember, you're releasing a global product, so you're gonna have people all over the world with different backgrounds who are responding in different ways. It's almost like I think KFC came out with some sort of really racist ad in Australia, and these were Australian people that created the ad for Australians, and they didn't know that Americans were going to see it on YouTube and get really angry because it wasn't for Americans. So I don't know. And don't get me wrong. I maybe I'm naive though. Maybe I would hate to believe that they are sinister enough that they said, you know what, we're going to just piss people off by releasing a shoe that reminds them of one of the greatest atrocities in human history. But at the same time, we do know that there are many occasions where corporations will do things that they know are offensive to people of color, but they don't worry about it because they know that typically the uproar is not that great. They know that the consequences of offending black people are not that great. It's like when the White House or when Congress makes members of Congress make decisions or make comments that are offensive to black Americans. They say, well, the black vote. I may lose a few black voters, but who cares, right? So maybe that was it. They just didn't care. So you think that Adidas should not, once they made this decision to release the shoe, which I hope that you and I can agree was not a good decision.
We do.
Okay, you're saying that they should have stuck to their guns and not pulled the shoe back. They should have just stayed with their decision. Why would you say that?
I say that because I believe that was the decision to begin with, to take a risk and do something to cause an uproar. And it feels almost that they think you would believe that after the fact they then saw what it implied and then said, "Oh, sorry," and backtracked. Um, I just don't believe on Facebook. Facebook is here in America. I'm just having a hard time believing that they never at any point, and also even in their explanation, they never really said what it was supposed to be.
Hmm.
They
Interesting.
didn't. They didn't at any point say, "Oh, actually, what the designer had in mind was," and we can see how you might have misconstrued it as. They just said, "Oh, sorry, we'll take it right off the market." They could have just said, "No, it might look like a shackle, but actually, this is what it represents," and so on. People with, you know, art as a background always have some creative source, and he
Mhm.
never cited a creative source of any kind. He just said, "Oh, sorry," and then pulled it back. I think
Well,
they wanted a lot of attention and got way more than they thought they would.
right. So here's what I think. Okay, well, first I'll say that Adidas did issue a statement initially where they were trying to stick to their guns, and they said that
Mhm.
they cited the designer of the shoe and said, oh well, this is just a zany concoction of this great designer so and so. I can't remember his name, and so
Mhm.
they tried to stand by their product, which makes sense to a point because you know that, as you mentioned, you take that risk to try to get that attention. You know that that's going to come with controversy, so for a while you try to stick it out. But it seems to me that maybe there was a point where the controversy hit a critical mass, where it hit a point where the positive no longer outweighed the negative, where sticking
Right.
to this was just not going to be a good business strategy, that they needed to just cut their losses and keep it going, or be at risk of really alienating a lot of people. Remember, Adidas makes a lot of money from street credibility from individuals, particularly NBA players. They wear their shoes, and so they maybe couldn't really risk that because we're the ones who get each other and get other people to line up around the block for a week to spend $200 on a pair of shoes that cost $12 to make, right? So maybe they just felt that it was too risky at that point to continue forward with what they were doing. So
Right.
so I actually applaud the decision, but so I guess that's where we would disagree. That maybe you say, hey, look, you made your bed, sleep in it, and I say, you know what? You made the bed. It's got bed bugs in it. Get out, and you
Get
can
out.
buy another bed. But I think the disagreement is respectful. So, do you think there's anything that we can learn, about this? Do you think that Adidas can learn anything from this, and if so, what would that be, or would they learn anything at all?
I think so. And I saw it a lot in the comments from the articles that you wrote and the article that I wrote. A lot of the comments were saying, look, this is clearly a case of people who lack diversity. If there had been just one black person in the room, he or she would have said, wait a minute, what is this? I'm offended, or this is going to offend somebody. And that unfortunately is the case, you know. And you know, you mentioned earlier that you're an instructor at the college level, and so am I. That's something that I talk a lot about. That you know, the instruction that we give, is it relevant? Is it inclusive? And the same thing applies with the workplace. If it's not inclusive, then things like this are going to happen. You know,
Hmm.
if we go by your theory that they just enough to think that something like that could fly, then that tells us that they really do need to diversify their workforce and have more people that are sensitive and intelligent enough to diversity issues to not have something like this happen.
Hmm. Well, that's very interesting. I agree with you. I think that um, I think they made a huge mistake, and I think it's a mistake that was easily avoidable. I talked to a marketing professor today that I have a lot of respect for by the name of Dr. Tommy Whitler out of DePaul, and he told me a story about a corporation that one of his colleagues worked for. Where there was a black face in the room when a racist, a blatantly racist ad campaign was being considered, and that person spoke up and said, you can't release that, you got to scratch that ad campaign. And the person's manager kicked him under the table and said, you can't say that. So I think the goal is to not just have diverse faces in the room when you're making these critical decisions, and also and also have focus groups with people of color. But you also have to empower those voices. You have to make sure that people know that diversity is more than skin deep. It's not a matter of you simply coming in and assimilating to the thinking of the people around you. It's a matter of you coming in, bringing a unique voice and a unique and empowered perspective that will be appreciated and respected. And I think that's where a lot of universities, a lot of corporations, a lot of institutions just get it wrong. They don't know what diversity actually is, and I think that they have to understand that
Right.
that not pursuing diversity in an accurate way is not just the wrong thing to do, but it's also very costly for your business. And I think Adidas is learning that after they probably lost a good $5 million on this ad campaign. So,
Absolutely.
thank you very much for your time, Nomalanga. This is Nomalanga Mhauli-Moses. She is one of our editors at Your Black World. She also runs the website successfulblackwoman.com, and she is the reigning Mrs. MRS, Mrs. Botswana. So thank you very much, and
Thanks, boy.
thank you, and thank you for checking us out at yourblackworld.com. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.